Good morning. How are you? It's good to be back, and it's good to share fellowship with you and to worship with you. If you are a visitor, thank you for choosing to worship with us this morning. This is the Church of Christ Campus Ministry at the University of Jacob. We are honored to have you here in our midst this morning. If you have any need that you can meet, please don't hesitate to ask. After church, please hang around for quite a bit so that we can get to know you and get to socialize with you. Now, for those of you who have been coming, you know that we are preaching through Paul's first letter to the church at Thessalonica. A lot has been said. Actually, as usual, helping us appreciate verses 5 to 9. This morning, we are going to focus on verse 10 to 12. And this is, as was read for us, this is what the Apostle Paul wrote. He says, "You are witnesses, and God also, how holy and righteous and blameless was our conduct towards you believers. For you know how, like a father with his children, we exalted each one of you and encouraged you and charged you to walk in a manner worthy of God, who calls you into his own kingdom." And the theme that I'm choosing for this section is service with integrity, with a question mark. Can you believe that the motto of the Ghana is service with integrity? Can you believe it? Did you know this? Did you know this? Evidently, whoever envisioned the Ghana Police Service imagined an community service that discharged their duties and with the highest sense of professionalism. The pioneers of the Ghana Police Service envisaged a state which was head with each personnel serving a country with the highest sense of unimpeachable character, integrity, and service. The anticipation was that if the institution of state vested with the responsibility of ensuring internal law and order would themselves become gender or promote law and order, then freedom, social justice, and development. Because integrity and service are two critical values that hold law and order in place. Being in public service at the Church of Christ demands service. Because when you are serving the public or the republic, we are, or you become a custodian of the resources of the state. And so, if you did not have integrity, imagine what you do with the resources, the authority, that the state rests in you. So, we imagine that what service knew that they needed integrity. As our common experience is, the Ghana Police Service is bad. Not so, they don't serve with a lot of integrity. Trouble. According to a study at the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime in 2001, which was published by online on August 15th, Ghana Police Service is number 12 when it comes to the top bribe-taking institutions in Ghana. Who is a bribe? Yes. And the Land Commission, service, and the custom division, they occupy. Did you hear the list? Have you come again? Okay, so the Land Commission, Judicial Service, Immigration Service, Local Government Service, and the Ghana Revenue Authority, Customs Division, occupy the top 5. Let me ask you, how many of you are not looking for jobs in these areas? In these departments? The rest are passport officers, teachers, lecturers and professors, and public utility companies like ECG. They say that every day, an average of 1,600 and something is paid in one of these institutions as bribe. So these are the top corrupt institutions in our country. So my point is, even though the motto of the Ghana Police Service is service with integrity, the reality is that this group, this institution, is serving with less integrity. The aspirations of the 4 founding fathers of this state institution have failed. Who envisaged the Ghana Police Service and what they needed to do to ensure that our nation grows, develops, I'm sure they may be revising their notes wherever they might be. And in the passage that was read for us, I think the Apostle Paul also imagines the church and the ministry the church offers the world, the ministry of the word, the ministry of salvation and sanctification as a public good. The church and her ministers are custodians of the mysteries of God. The church has been entrusted with dispensing and making known what is the wise plan of God to save humankind by grace through faith in Christ Jesus. And I want to submit to us this morning that by virtue of what the Apostle Paul writes, he also acknowledges that the success of our ministry is connected to the level of integrity with which the ministers of the church serves. Whatever the church is supposed to be about, we are going to succeed or fail depending on the level of integrity with which we act. So I'm going to ask us this morning, as the Church of Christ in Ghana, what is the level of integrity with which we serve? Remember, these institutions that I mentioned, it is possible your father, your auntie, your mother, your brother, who is a member of the church, works in this institution. And so, how different are we in terms of serving with integrity? When we come to our own congregation here, we have ministries. People serve in ministry of evangelism, education, women's ministry, children's ministry, finance ministry. Let me ask you, those of us who are working, those of us who are serving, what is the level of integrity with which we are serving? Are you a person of integrity? Am I a person of integrity? I believe that is the question that Paul, by writing this, is wanting us to explore. As the preacher here, am I serving with integrity? And this is not a question for me to answer. This is a question for you to answer. Because I am serving you and not the other way around. But clearly, if we read the statement again, Paul is saying that his ministry, together with the team that he served with, he says, they served with unimpeachable integrity. In verse 10, it says, you are witnesses, and also of God. Paul is not just making this claim. He says, I have witnesses to back this claim. And that if a court, a judicial inquiry is called into my ministry, I have two people who can speak to the veracity of what I'm saying. He says, you, the people have said, you are my witnesses. I lived with you. I served among you. And you saw how I lived with you. I did not abuse anybody. I did not charge anybody for anything. I worked with my own hands to feed myself. Even though I am entitled to take a salary from you, I didn't. And says, you are my witness. Not only you, he says, God is also my witness. And that if God were to do an audit of my choices and decisions whilst working with you, he would have nothing against me. He would have no charge against me. Let me ask you. We say in our parlance, or trophon was in a dance anyway. Those of you who don't understand me, I don't know how to do it. It's only a liar who says my witnesses are abroad. That means that they are not here to give evidence. But Paul is saying my witnesses are here. One is omniscient. He sees everything. He knows everything. Let me ask you, who can vouch for your integrity as a person? Can anybody vouch for your integrity? Can anybody vouch for your integrity? For the Apostle Paul, he says, God can vouch for my integrity. And he goes on to talk about the character of his ministry. In the second part of verse 10, he says, how holy. Look at the adverbs he uses, 3 of them. And all of them are very deep and very high. He says, how holy. Holy is a word many of us do not want to use, right? We use it as a pejorative, holier than anamoma unawe. Paul is saying, as for me, my conduct with you, my ministry among you was holy. It means you cannot find any fault in what I did. I was exceptional in how I related with you. I did not abuse anybody. I did not cheat anybody. My acts, thoughts are sanctified, holy. Not only that, he says it is righteous, from the Greek word dikaios, which means it is just. I was fair with you. I gave to you what I was supposed to give you. I refused to give you what I'm not supposed to give you. I was just. I was fair. I was equitable with you. And he goes on to say, I was blameless. He says, my actions, my ministry, it was not only holy. He says, it was righteous as well. And it was blameless. 3 extremely high virtue words. Can you say the same about your service, wherever you find yourself? Would you have the moral courage to pick these words? Or you think that you do not deserve to use them? In other words, what Paul is saying is this, that nobody can bring any charge against me based on how I did my ministry with you. Even if you are an evil person and you wanted to concoct a story, there is no way you can substantiate any accusation you bring against me. Not only you, even God cannot sustain any allegation against you. You may think he's being haughty, but he is also not trying to allow anybody to demean the character of his ministry. Sometimes there are certain things we may say about ourselves that may cause the displeasure of people, but if it's the truth, what do you care? It's what Paul saying the truth
in his mind, yes. And after his death, hundreds of years, we have not had anybody come up after him to say that Paul was this, he did this. And let me share with you a personal story. You know, I became a student here in 2008, and the very first Sunday I came, I was given the opportunity to preach. And somehow people got wind of my past. My past in terms of the fact that I was a footballer. And you know, in Ghana, the thing is that every footballer is perceived to be a womanizer, right? So a young man like me preaching for a campus church full of young ladies. And in some ways, people were acknowledging the gift I had for preaching. And so when that happened, you know, some of the church members will not be happy. Because you may be taking the shine away from. And since I like to relate. So whenever they saw me with a young lady, they imagined that we're coming from a certain room. Which means that perhaps I may have slept with the entire ladies in the church. And rumors were spreading. To the extent that one day I was in class, I was doing psychometrics. Those of you who know, one of the courses I struggled in school. One of the church ladies called me that I should come to her hostel. I didn't have mission, I'm in taxi. And I received this call. I had to leave. And so I left class and went. When I went there, one of our church members was in a room. And he told him to tell me what he came to tell her. Apparently, this guy said that he had received a vision that I was having an affair with her. Look at the vision people are having. And so, one day, I visited one of our church people, and he was telling me about some of the struggles I've had to go through while working for the campus church. He says, well, after all these years that we graduated, we have not heard any rumor that you were involved with any of the church members. And I told them, yes. A clear conscience does not fear criticism. If whatever you are doing, you are clear in your mind that you are doing the best that you can based on the ability God has given you, you are not afraid. And you can say that I did what I did in a holy manner, in a righteous manner, in a blameless manner. And over time, God is going to vindicate you. No, in some of these people in ministry, when they die, then you hear stories. But that has not happened. The point I'm trying to make here is this. Yes, accusations will come, but will time vindicate you? Will time show you off as a holy servant of God, as a servant of God with integrity? Paul is showing himself true because even after his death, not even his critics have had anything to say that impugns his integrity. He says, I served you righteously, in a holy manner, and blamelessly. Nobody can accuse me of any wrongdoing. In other words, his character was or is unassailable. His integrity is unimpeachable. There is nothing you can use against him. Then he says, for you know, and in all these, he's appealing to the common knowledge of the people. He says, you know. You know, you have a settled experiential understanding of what I'm saying. I am not concocting a story. He says, you know how, like a father with his children, Paul is turning to use a domestic familial metaphor. Even though he did not give birth to any of them biologically, but spiritually he acted like a father to them. And in antiquity, a father was not only responsible for feeding the children, He was responsible for instructing them, for disciplining them, and for training them. And so he trained them, he disciplined them, and he instructed them. He was responsible for moving them from a place of ignorance, from a place of immaturity to responsible adulthood. Whenever you read in scripture and you notice some of these metaphors, brothers and sisters, Paul was not only there teaching, he was there forming and transforming. In other words, Paul is saying, my ministry with you, the goal, the intent, the telos, as theologians would say, was spiritual formation and not just education. And so I'm saying that Paul lived the way he lived. He said the way he said because he did not want his life to come in the way of the transformation of the people. Let me tell you, if any of you had evidence that I was having an amorous relationship with any of you, would you listen to what I preach? Would my words hold any value to you? So Paul had to live that way because he did not want his life to come in the way of the transformation of the people. Brothers and sisters, do people take Christianity seriously because you are one? Is anybody interested in becoming a Christian because of the way you live? Brothers and sisters, our responsibility as Christians, as members of the Church of Christ, is not to tell people how wrong they are. Is to teach people how well to live as those who belong to the kingdom of God. When you live a life of integrity, preaching the gospel and converting people becomes so easy because they have evidence in your life. They are struggling to become, but you become an evidence that it is possible to become. Paul is saying my life was holy, it was righteous, it was blameless. And it was because I wanted to form you and transform you. Many of us are not growing spiritually because our lives is not an example to other people. Turn to your left or right. Turn to your left. Are you encouraged to be transformed by virtue of who is seated beside you? So have you seen our problem? The reason why we are not growing spiritually because we don't encourage one another in the way we live, in who we are. He says, I acted as your father. And what is the point? Verse 12. How did he transform them? What are the tools that he used as a father? He says, we exalted each one of you and encouraged you and charged you to walk in a manner worthy of God. This was Paul's purpose. This was his intention. This was the reason why he was encouraging, the reason why he was exalting, the reason why he was charging, so that they would walk. And I've told you, walk is a metaphor for a career. Paul wanted the church in Thessalonica to develop a career that was consistent with the manner of God. Their lifestyle needed to be worthy, same as, in a good way, a good reflection of who God is. He says, I encourage you. To encourage means to put in mind or to put more courage. I exalted you. I sort of said soothing words to you. To charge means to entreat, to urge. I urge you. And the point is, I was doing all these things so that you begin to become like people that reflect the character of God. This God is the one who called you into his own kingdom and glory. The point Paul is trying to make here is this. The way he lived was directly proportional to what the church needed to become. Now, sometimes people do not want to come to church because of the kind of people they come and meet at church. Troubles. People have excuses why they don't have to grow. So, what is the encouragement for you to do? For you to stop what you are doing? So, living a life of integrity is not only good for ourselves, but it is good for the entire church. It creates an environment for growth, for transformation, for formation. So when you ask yourself, are you a positive example to somebody else? Now, when it comes to Tuesday, would you be here? So are you an encouragement to somebody not to forsake the assembly of the saints? Are you? Are you a person of integrity? With the way you behave between Monday and Friday, the way you dress between Monday and Friday, the way you talk between Monday and Friday, are you a person of integrity? Are you a whole Christian? I've told you, integrity comes from the Latin word integer, the word from which we get integer, positive and negative whole numbers. Who is a person of integrity? A person of integrity is a whole person. A person who has all his values and beliefs intact. No environment encourages him or her to leave his or her value behind. For some of you, you have left your values behind since you became a university student, right? All the things you were taught, you no longer believe them, you no longer use them. You are not a whole person. You are a half person. You are a fraction. You are a fraction. You are a fraction of the kind of person God created you to be and to become. You are not whole. Because you are not living with integrity. The point we can take from what the Apostle Paul is saying that as Christians, we must live with integrity. We must serve with integrity. It is not good enough to serve. Your service must be characterized by what? Integrity. It is not good enough for me to be preaching and teaching. My preaching and my teaching must be characterized by what? Integrity. I must walk my talk and talk my walk. I must be seen to be embodying the things I am teaching you. It is not good enough to be the finance servant. You must serve the finance ministry with integrity. When any light is thrown on the books, if the books are audited, there must not be any discrepancy. Yes, it may be 0.1, but it must be negligible to the extent that no accusation of embezzlement can be sustained. If you are serving in the education ministry, you must serve with integrity. You must do the thing you are doing for the sake of Christ, not for any external gain, to be seen, to be heard, or anything. If you are serving in the women's ministry, serve with integrity. Not for power, not for control, but just for the good of the church. Even if you are not serving, like many of you are not, live your life with integrity. Tell the truth all the time. Be faithful, be sincere, be honest in your conversations. People must know that as for this person, this is what we can expect from him. Don't blow hot and cold. Don't be gray. Nobody can figure you out, whether you are black or white. We must not be like the Ghana Police Service. A question mark must not be placed on who we are. We must be a church of integrity. Our actions must be holy, it must be righteous, and it must be blameless. This does not mean that we are perfect, but even when there is an error, we admit and we apologize. Persons of integrity are not perfect people, but they are individuals that admit their faults and ask for help. Are you that kind of a person? We must serve with integrity, because the damage done to Christianity by those who purport to serve based on the Christian worldview has been incalculable. When people hear that this person is a preacher, an elder, yet embroiled in some sexual scandal, in some financial misappropriation, the damage that is done to Christianity is incalculable. We cannot calculate it. We cannot repair it. So each one of us must be at our best every time, every day, everywhere. We must be people of integrity. People whose integrity is unimpeachable. Preachers must not be embroiled in sexual scandals. Missionaries must not engage in misapplication of funds. Elders must not engage in abuse of power. Members must not be negligent in what they are supposed to do. And those who show their time must do so with integrity. That is just my part. Serving with integrity involves 3 steps, and I'll share it now and then. The first is you must discern what is right and what is wrong. You cannot serve with integrity without your moral compass fully calibrated, well calibrated, not knowing what is wrong and not knowing what is right. You must know what is wrong. You must know what is right. You must know what is ethical, what is immoral. You must know all these things. Not just know from the head, but it must sink down in your heart. In other words, your moral compass must be fully in place. What does that mean? It means that you must know what is right and live by what is right. Merely knowing what is right and leaving what is left, you become a compromiser. If you be a person of integrity, you must know what is right from what is wrong. 2, you must act on what you have discerned, even at personal cost. If you know this is wrong, people may not like the fact that you believe that it is wrong, but once you know it is wrong, you must avoid it at all costs, irrespective of people's reactions towards you. Brothers and sisters, you cannot be a person of integrity at no expense. You see, Jesus was not sinless without a cost. Calvary is the cost he had to pay for his sinlessness. And all of us must be willing to pay a cost for our integrity. You must be willing to stay away from some people because of your integrity. You must say no to some relationships because of your integrity. You must avoid certain places because of your integrity. You must be willing to accept some labels when you ought to say, when you ought to say. It doesn't matter insofar as you maintain your integrity. That is what is important. Because you would be representing God the best way possible. So you must discern what is right and you must act on what you have discerned. And third, you must openly say that you are acting on your understanding of what is right or wrong. You see, the only time we become private citizens of the kingdom is when issues of morality arise. We don't know what you stand for, do we? We know the political party you support. We know the EPL team you support. But your value system, nobody knows. Because that helps you to be flexible, right? To be a person of integrity, you must constantly be announcing your boundaries. As for me, this one I will not do. Everybody must know that about you. In your workplace, with your friends, people must know what you stand for. So they know that you will not fall for everything. As a young person, what do you stand for? As a young lady, what would you not do? Who knows? And who has a sense of your moral compass? Who knows? People must know what differentiates you. And so when they want evil done, they will not come to you. And so for us to serve and live with integrity, we must know what is right, we must act on what we know is right, and we must openly communicate our value system to people. These require some level of moral reflectiveness. Begging. Which means you must have the capacity to think about moral issues all the time. You know, what is wrong or what was wrong 20 years ago, today is not considered what? But you must not join the crowd to sin. You must be able to think and determine for yourself what is wrong and what is right. You must be able to reflect. So, in the past, you see, you have to draft for you to be what? At the examination hall, right? But now you have developed complex systems to cheat. You must be able to determine that even though I am not stretching this way, but the other way that I'm doing, is it still wrong? We must be morally reflective. 2, we must be steadfast. When you know that something is wrong, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. For you know your labor in the Lord is never in. Yeah? People are always going to push your boundaries. By virtue of knowing, oh, me, I've decided not to have sex until I get married. Then now you have become a target. That is where the person is going to buy you ice cream. But when that comes, you must be steadfast. Me, I will not take bribes. That is where the contract is going to come to your table. You must be steadfast. Me, I will not lie. That's where you'll be tempted. You must be steadfast. You must stand firm. So that when the storms come, you'll be able to stand. Just like this guy, Joe, the one, are you still holding on to your integrity? See, the temptations and all the struggles were meant to displace him from his values. And because he was standing firm, because he was steadfast, he did not renounce his faith in God. He did not change with the wind. Many of us, all that is required to change you is just chocolate. Just money. Money. You will sell your dignity to the highest bidder. Is that all that you are worth? Money? Just because you want to get an A. Now, A and alphabet. So, be able to think morally, be able to stand steadfastly. And the last thing is this: be unashamed about doing what is right. My brother, my sister, when you know what you are doing is according to the will of God, then the consequence. Sorry, I'm using the language. I have to use a language you can appreciate. It doesn't matter what people think about you. What matters is what God thinks about you. And for what you are doing and for the stance you are taking, you are defending the light of God. God is solidly behind you. And so you should not care. You should not mind. Just stand fair. Don't deny your faith. Don't renounce it. People are going to call you names. Griffin, Anamoma, David. All manner of names. But don't give up. Don't give in. Stand your ground. And once you have not denied God in front of people, God is also not going to deny you on the last. Let us serve with integrity wherever we find ourselves. If you are learning how to cheat when you go, when you get employment, that is not helpful to the Christian faith. That is not going to help us change this country. That is not going to help us become the salt and the light of this world. Losing our integrity is not going to enhance the spread of the kingdom. Our country is going down the drain because of lack of integrity. This new generation must stand firm and strong. There is something more than making money. It is better to have God's favor than to fill your pocket with ill-gotten wealth. Be a person of integrity. For our congregation, let us all commit to serving with integrity. And I tell you, God is going to show himself strong in our lives. I am committing myself not to do anything that is going to put our congregation in disrepute. That you'll one day hear that with all that you knew about Oso, he was doing this behind the veil. I am committing myself to that, and you must commit yourself to that as well. So that whoever joins us, even though he may not like what we teach, how we teach it, but he will not have any evidence of evil doing against any one of us. Let us be a congregation that serves with integrity. And I am sure the Lord would find a way to write a letter like he wrote to the churches in Asia Minor and commend us for not defiling ourselves with the food of the world. You see, you cannot become integrity by yourself. It takes the grace of God. The Apostle Paul wrote, I think in that 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 10, he says, I am what I am, and I did what I did by the grace of God. He says he worked harder than all the rest, but it wasn't by his strength, just by the grace of God. Brothers and sisters, if we are going to overcome the decay going on in the world, it will take the grace of God. The grace of God begins with a relationship with Jesus. I'm offering this invitation to you. If you're a young person, you come to church, but you don't have a relationship with Jesus. You don't have a relationship with God because you have not accepted him to be your Lord and your Savior. Today is an opportunity for you. Don't delay it. Don't postpone it. Tomorrow was never promised anybody. If you want to become a Christian, if you want to access the grace of God, we'll be happy to help you. If you're already a member, but you have strayed and you want to revive and stir the grace of God back into your life, we'll be able to help you as well. Whatever your need is, come now as we stand and as we sing.